So they're offering different types of proteins, but they're not saying have this one because it's better for the environment. They're saying you can have this one because it's good too, right?
To get ideas and then get research results out relatively quick.
The branding aspects or experiential aspects and the transactional aspects at the same time, and there's no one way.
Welcome to the Next Gen Retail Pod. We're sitting here at Mariatorget in Stockholm, and I'm John Karsberg, Head of Strategy and Insights with Workshop. And as you know, I am very much curious about what's going on in retail. And a lot of the times I really want to take a consumer perspective, or we want to take a consumer perspective on that and really understand what's making a difference and what's going on. And that is a perspective that I know that I share with Professor Sara Rosengren, who I am delighted to have as a guest in this pod today. She is heading Center for Retailing at the Stockholm School of Economics. That is doing lots of research and also running a bachelor program in retail management. So we will today delve into retail trends in a way and what's going on in retail with the education lens and also then the research lens. So I'm very much excited to see what's going on with those two perspectives. And I think that we will probably land in some of the similar challenges and mechanisms that we do when we take it from a business perspective. But it's, I think I'm really excited to see where we will end up. So Sara, welcome. Just start with telling us a little bit more about you and Center for Retailing.
Okay, yes, so thank you for having me. My name is Sara Rosengren and I'm a professor of retailing and marketing at Stockholm School of Economics. As a researcher, I tend to be very much about consumer behavior and trying to understand how consumers react to different types of retail and marketing activities that we expose them to. I also head the Center for Retailing at the school, where we have education and research in close collaboration with the Swedish retail industry. So we run this bachelor program, a 3-year program, specifically tailored for retail management. And then we also do a lot of different research projects related to retail and the future of retail, I would say.
Cool. And I also promised to ask you about your favorite brand.
My favorite brands. There's so many of them. Well, I guess since we're in a retail podcast, I will pick a retail brand. And I actually really like Pocket Shop, the convenience store for pocket books. I think it's a really nice format. They have really good locations for it. They meet you where you could potentially have time to read one of those novels, and it's very inspiring with the different recommendations that they put up. So that would be my favorite.
Do you see them both then physically and digitally, or is your main connection to them and physical that they have physical outlets where you end up?
I think the physical part is what I like about them.
And the reviews and the personal...
Yeah, the way it in a very small space, they managed to do a lot with book reading.
Cool. And interesting also, since books, I guess, is one of the more digitalized categories, where I don't know exactly percentage-wise, but I think it's the vast majority of books are sold in digital channels.
True, yeah. They managed to find the physical need for
which
it.
Which is fantastic. And let's then. I promised that we will have two lenses on today. One education lens, which I think is really interesting, and when it comes to people. And there's lots of talk, of course, in retail about, as we said, about different channels, and also AI is driving maybe less store staff or more automation, or there are lots of things happening. And then with people and educating people and really understanding is, I think, increasingly important. So I think it's cool to say, okay, first if we go back history-wise to a retail management track at the Stockholm School of Economics and Marketing, how did that come about, and a little bit around what you are then educating for in a way?
Yes, I guess from our perspective, so the Stockholm School of Economics, we started the bachelor program in retail management in 2008. So 15 years ago, over 15 years ago. And in that point in time, it was actually the Swedish retail industry that came to the school and said that we really want your help. We are growing quite rapidly as an industry. Our organizations are changing. So it used to be perhaps that you could grow from within and you could kind of find talents in the store and move them up through various leadership positions. And then they would eventually end up, as the CEO. And that obviously still happens sometimes, but it's not the most common path, right? And what they were experiencing at that time was that when they were recruiting from business schools, the training that students get there is typically more for industrial companies or companies more interested in financial services and not really knowledgeable about retail and the kind of questions that retail companies are facing and also the pace of retail, right? So they wanted our help to come up with a bachelor program that would meet the needs of the industry better.
So what are they, I guess, asking for now then? Because I know that you work very close also to industrial partners still. Are there any specifics that they are really wanting you to to train people in?
No, I think a lot has happened in the 15 years, right, since we started the program, and a lot of changes in the organizations and in the kind of people you are looking for. And I think right now one of the key things is to find people who can deal with change and who understand speed and who are open to that. So we work a lot with our students, not only around the specific topics related to retail management and, various things that you need to know about assortments and your customers, but also in terms of training them with skills that are entrepreneurial, reflective, that will enable them to learn quickly and then relearn when there's need for that. So I think there's a very much of an openness to change and also to the fact that we need to work together to come up with what are those competences that are needed for the future.
Yeah, but I might be a little bit biased since I kind of like Center for Retailing and also like the closeness to the retail industry and how it's applied. But I would say that what you are listing as key competences would be great for any type of academic or education in general, to have speed and to be close to the customer and understand sales and understand, I guess, research and the market. Or
for me, when I describe what we do, a lot of non-retailers, they tend to say, but that's being entrepreneurial, right? And if you look at what retail is and what makes retail companies successful, it's usually that they are very entrepreneurial, that they're thinking newly, they're adapting to the shifting needs of their customer audiences, and they are continuously making small adjustments and learning. So it's business, right? But we're very much focused on a business where you have an end consumer or many end consumers, and you really need to understand how they are changing with them.
Yeah, and you said that you're focusing a lot on speed. Is that the biggest the biggest change in the curriculum, I guess, the last years? Is there anything what is the last added course or exchanged course?
I think, since we started, we have done a couple of major rehauls of the curriculum. And I think we're doing one now for the ones who started in 2023. But the biggest one, I think, was in 2018 when we realized that we need to have more flexibility to actually bring in new things in the curriculum. And if you know about higher education, so you recruit someone for a 3-year program. And on the day that they are admitted, or even before that, when they are about to apply, you need to tell them this is what the coming 3 years will look like. And of course, that builds somewhat of an inertia, right? So what we do is that we have one course which is called the Applied Retail track, where we actually identify the content together with the corporate partners, and they are actually also co-producing education with us in that track. So that's one way in which we get speed, and we continuously have the industry telling us, now we need to work with the students on this. And the other thing that we did was that we changed. So on the 3rd year, we have a course called the Current Issues in Retailing, which is defined just as a course where you learn about current issues. And it follows the structure of a course, but of course the current issues will change. So when we did this in 2018, we had 2 main things. It was big data, right? And then it was sustainability. And then since we've kind of integrated a lot of the things that we covered in the current issues course, it's now part of our other courses. So you learn about those things in the curriculum as it is. And then instead we bring in new things. And now obviously it's a lot of generative AI in the current issue course.
And what I like a lot with retail, at least according to me, it is a lot about curiosity and also lots of, as you said, entrepreneurial retail. Is you test, you're out, you're meeting people. And also I see that there is at least a bit of a tradition of experimentation and really working with, I guess, data. Especially there's some big, I guess mainly, or grocery retailers that have a very big history of really working and working data driven. So I think it's really interesting, and I know that your work, as you work very close to the partners, you can be very applied. And then shifting over to the next a lens, if you look a little bit even more on like research, I know that it's the same thing, and why I've also enjoyed being part of like the research or the retail research world is that it is applied, it is close, it's possible to get ideas and then get research results out relatively quick. So it's pretty applied. So I'm very interested now to see what's going on in the research world. And I guess that there's probably a lot of AI also there. But what's on the agenda? Or first, what is like, because you've done research for quite some time by now. Lots of started with advertising and clutter and things a long time ago. But what is the most fun research project that you've done?
Oh, ever?
Yeah.
The most fun ever. That's a great
or
question.
Most surprising result or something that you would like to highlight.
Well, one of my favorite topics or projects has been the work I did with Mikael Dahlén on advertising equity, which was basically, as you mentioned, so I started out as a brands and advertising researcher, and I did a lot of work on clutter and how people don't want to be exposed to ads and they don't like it and they're avoiding it in various ways. And then in the end we started to think about, but that's not entirely true, right? Because there's a lot of advertising that people really love, and there are brands that we really enjoy interacting with in various ways. So we had a project where we looked at how can we try to capture the value that is created by really good advertising, and can we actually measure it? And we were able to do that and able to show like the value of, for instance, we have in Sweden a very long-running TV commercial with the biggest grocery retailer, ICA, right? And it's been along for a long time, and people don't mind watching it when it comes on because it's fun and it's entertaining, and that kind of value created by the advertising in itself we refer to as advertising equity, and I think that's been one of the more fun things I've worked on.
Yeah, and I think that is really, really interesting, and it adds a lot to, I would say also it can be applied to the complexity of today, when I would say that everything is almost communicating, or everything is communicating, and the commercial messages are kind of mixed, and from like the old school advertising to very, very close to transaction things. And I think I've talked about this here before, but I think that the focus on that the distinction between parts of these communication channels is actually not very good. I think that there's a lot of potential that is lost because you don't see it as one holistic entity where everything communicates.
Yeah, and I think it was when after I was working on advertising equity, I went into retailing more and more, and that was about the time when there was more and more omni-channel offerings taking place, right? So where the traditional brick and mortar retailers really started to invest also in digital channels. And I think from that perspective, it also became very interesting because sometimes maybe the physical store was actually where you build advertising equity or experience equity, where you really build the brand and then you sell it through the online channel, or vice versa, right? So you really need to be able to think about both the branding aspects or experiential aspects and the transactional aspects at the same time. And there's no one way in which these will work out. It depends a lot on what you have to offer, but also the type of customers that you're tailoring to.
Yeah, I think that we've talked about this also here before, but the need to create or could be a need, or you could use a physical space to build some parts of a brand experience and a long-term transactional need, and then you use other channels for other things. And there's an increasing need to work with the physical store because of the increased digital complexity and that is more and more expensive to buy relatively low quality traffic. Okay, but that was then. So what's going on in the retail research world at the moment?
Well, I guess it depends partly what you define as the world, right? But in general, I would say in international and as well as at the center, of course, there are digitalization and sustainability that are the two kind of main trends that we really need to consider in various ways in our research. And I would say that perhaps here in Sweden and at the center, we are a bit more advanced in terms of the sustainability angle than many of our international colleagues who still tend to be more interested in the digitalization side. And then if you look at, so what is digitalization? It's obviously super broad, but it has everything from like the shifting ecosystem. So the different types of business models that retailers are using these days, the different types of actors that are involved in creating a retail offer. So you have like all the payment systems, influencers, a lot of actors that are kind of moving into spaces traditionally managed or controlled by retailers. And then, of course, you also have more on the offering side, like are we offering physical products or are we offering digital products of some kind, and how are we building that relationship with our customer? So I think we're trying to be relevant across all of those, but at the center we are mostly marketing researchers, so we tend to be more close to the consumer or customer side of these developments, like what's the interface going to be and how it's going to work out. When it comes to sustainability, I think we have a similar, like it's going on several levels, like from the macro to the micro. But here we also look a lot at the challenges within the retail organization in terms of sustainability. We talk a lot about the attitude behavior gap in consumers, right? They're saying we want to be sustainable, but then we're not really seeing that in transactions. But there are a lot of gaps also within organizations when it comes to we're having this kind of ambition, we're having these goals, but in the end, are we really changing things in how we do them?
Yeah, and what from that gap when it comes to consumers, is there anything that can be done on a personal level? Because I tend to be a bit more. Yeah, I tend to be having that gap also myself sometimes.
You've experienced the gap.
Yes, I am experiencing it, unfortunately, every now and then. But are there any things, takeaways?
I think one of the things that I try to say actually to our partners is that a lot of it has to be solved by the retailers and the brands, not necessarily by the consumers, because it's difficult to be a consumer and to kind of live up to this. So if I were to give you advice on a personal level, I would say, well, try to focus on a few things that this is what I think is really important, and this is where I want to make a difference. And then you can try to align with that specific thing rather than trying everything at once, because then it becomes very tiring. But then if you look at it from more of a retailer perspective, of course, you have to think about it as how can we capitalize on this ambition that our customers have, but they are not able to fulfill. Can we make it easier?
How can we help?
Yeah. So one of the things is obviously like, okay, so maybe sustainability is important, but price and quality is even more important. So we first have to make sure that any sustainable offer also has the same price and the same quality as the other options, right? And then we work really hard on that. Another thing I think is we're tending to overthink the sustainability angle, and maybe if we know this is a more sustainable offer, okay, let's just market that one. We don't have to market it as a sustainable offer. We can just
as a default offer more.
That is what we're marketing, or that's what we put on our displays, etc.
Are there any brands, retailers that you think or want to highlight when it comes to this development that are both then working, I guess, data-driven and thought through? So they're trying to improve, or that we could look at.
I think Max hamburgers are an interesting example, right? So they are working on taste, but they also want to do that in a climate effective way. So they're offering different types of proteins, but they're not saying have this one because it's better for the environment. They're saying you can have this one because it's good too, right? So that kind of thinking, I think, would be a good starting point.
Yeah. If you were to get a research grant of, let's say, like 10 million Swedish crowns or so, and do, or maybe more, even, I don't know, and basically to get to start a research project, that anything you could wish for, what would that be?
Yeah, right now I think it would be around circularity, or whatever you want to call it, like how we make use of things that we have already in the system rather than source virgin things all the time. And I mean, you could address that depending on how much money you would get. You can do it on a micro level, or you could do it on a very big scale. But I think overall, this is something we need to solve together, right? We need to find new ways to have the kind of lifestyles that we want without having all these products that are not being used lying around idly, right? And I think the retail industry is really well equipped to be part of that solution because we have the infrastructure for bringing back things or having things taken out for shorter periods of times than in terms of permanent ownership. But of course, we have a big challenge since the traditional business model is that every transaction, every new thing that leaves the store is where we earn our profits. Yeah. But I think that would be the thing I would want to really go in depth on.
Yeah. It's difficult to say that there are more important things, because we really need to take care and understand these resources and some of the business models that retail that we are using is difficult to use in a world where we have to be more sustainable, or we have to focus a bit more on some of these perspectives.
And I also think that the digitalization is really a force that can help us with these things. So a lot of the things that we did 100 years ago or 150 years ago because there were no options, right? Now we could do them in a more effective way, so taking care of things or making sure that once I'm done with this jacket, someone else will get it. We can find ways to kind of make this work more efficiently with the help of digital tools, I think. Yeah. But we need to put more attention there than to whether or not we could have an AI helping us come up with how to kick a ball.
Yes. Yeah, there are lots of AI applications that we are pondering at the moment to see which ones will save the world and which ones are more for fun. Let's end anyway with some like retail trends, or if you go into like retail stores today and see or digital things and see, okay, what this is not good or this is extremely good, or things. What is it that you are thinking of if your retail brain is being used?
I think, I mean, it's really interesting because we have this moment where we both have like increasing digitalization and the removal of people in stores, right? With automated stores and things like that. But then we also have this very personal way. So I think we need to understand what works in which situation. But then I also think we're very prone to this kind of new shiny thing, thinking like, oh, so technology can do this, so now we have to invest in that. And you need to be more kind of careful about what's the core here. What is it that we're really offering? And is this technology supporting that? Is it disrupting that? Or is it just a new shiny toy that somebody else can look into and we can do it in a better way with current tools or another tool?
Yeah, and that's basically why I always, and I think you do the same, always say that you need to understand like the mechanisms and why things are happening and why people are acting the way they do, to be able to understand if these shiny new things will work, or in that case, why they will work.
Exactly.
Any other things that you want to add and tell retailers to do differently or to continue to do more of?
I think In terms of sustainability, I think definitely my advice would be to think about, instead of saying, oh, they're not doing this, customers are not picking the sustainable option, think about, okay, let's take it for face value that a lot of customers wants more sustainable options. What can we do to really facilitate that? I think that's an important way to shift perspective. And then another, when it comes to technology, is this old saying that, best way to predict the future is to be part of shaping it, and also that the future will not come without decisions made by retailers and others, right? So you are definitely part of shaping the future. So think about what that will mean and what you want to do with it.
That was a perfect ending to this conversation. Thanks a lot, Sara, for coming and joining me in this Curiosity Talks. I'm happy to have been able to pick your brain a bit, and let's see what the future, if we can then shape the future together, let's see what it has in, what's coming.
Thank you for having me.